We're going to throw everything aside and just jump straight into questions today. And this first one comes from William. He says, help me understand warm-up requirements and the performance throughout a ride. I feel like I need about an hour before I can perform properly. Early efforts feel terrible and make me want to quit, while later during comparable efforts, I enjoy pushing harder and farther. The people I ride with seem to be much more consistent in their performance, usually outperforming me in the beginning and keeping the same level throughout the ride, only dropping off toward the end when exhausted. Whereas I seem to struggle at first, often holding the others back. Then it evens out, and towards the end, I can often impress them with my efforts. So I paraphrase, where do you find the strength and energy at this point? That's what they're asking him. He says, and they don't do anything different than me. The difference is at most 10 minutes of riding to their pace or to their place or mine. So what could be the cause of this? Could it be physiological? I've done many years of strength training before starting cycling more seriously. So could it be explained by my muscle mass and muscle fiber type? What else could it be? Do you have any similar experiences yourself or with other riders? What can I do to improve this? Even if it's just a social ride, it does suck to be barely holding on for the first hour, and simply adding an hour at the beginning of each ride isn't really practical. We have a lot of fodder, whether it's personal experience, whether they're talking about warm-ups and the science behind warm-ups, lots of stuff to go through with this. But Ivy, you've done a ton of different types of racing, like track racing. So there's this old adage where it's like shorter event, longer the warm-up, longer event, shorter the warm-up, like where they're inversely related. That's an adage that isn't scientific. That's just like what we hear people say. And you have tested the extremes of that because you have done long world tour level pro road races. And then you've done track racing where you just stand and sprint for a short period of time. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed something like this before where it takes you a long time to warm up, whether it's in you or other riders?
Yeah, I've definitely raced with and ridden with people that say this and believe this, that they take longer to warm up and get so trapped in it that it sometimes maybe like William is experiencing kind of wrecks their ride or race because they get trapped in the mindset that they take so long to warm up. And the thing that stuck out to me about what William said is that the people they ride with outperform in the beginning and stay stronger. I don't know that that's necessarily true. Maybe the people that William is riding with just isn't waiting to feel absolutely perfect. I think William might be, and that's kind of what I've experienced with people that believe that they need a really long time to warm up. They usually don't. They're just waiting to feel just right and perfect. And everyone around them feels the same way, but they're just, they're not warmed up yet either, but they're just not waiting to feel just right. And they're maybe able to get into that effort a little bit better because they're not trapped in that mindset of thinking they need more time,
Yeah. Hannah, how about you? Does any of this resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do feel like I need a little bit longer warm up, maybe than some people, but definitely not an hour. So I think there's a point of diminishing returns in this where I completely agree with what Ivy's saying is at a certain point, you're no longer warming up. You're just waiting to feel perfect. And that moment may or may not ever come. And so I think really you need to understand. Yeah, exactly. Right. And so I think, what this individual needs to understand is what the main goals of warming up are. And once that individual has achieved those goals, it's time to just move forward, regardless of what they feel like.
Yeah. And Chad, this has got to strike chords with you because there are a lot of different questions in this that he's asked. There's also some assumptions in place. Where do you want to start with addressing this question? Then we'll get into more some practical things of what each of us do to warm up, and we can take that discussion.
Yeah, and Hannah just set this up really well too, and we'll get to what her warm up is because when we were discussing this prior in our planning meeting, she said so many things that hit on a lot of scientific points that I'll cover. So we'll get to that. But William, I want to express a little bit of I kind of relate to you because we just dove right into this. Typically we have a bit of preamble and we talk about a whole bunch of things and I can settle into a more relaxed groove, and there's no warm up today. We're doing
John
this.
said no.
So bear with us.
First slap attack.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, so let's just cover what Hannah alluded to. The purported purposes are really the benefits of warming up, and then we can maybe piece together why it's such a struggle for William, or maybe why it shouldn't be. First off, physiologically, there are a number of things we're trying to achieve, and largely we want to increase body muscle temperature. So you can call it body temp, but really we're trying to heat the muscles. There are other things that are going to heat with it, but a number of studies will have touted, and it is a clear scientific consensus. It's about a degree Celsius increase in muscle temperature can yield improvements in performance, and they can pin that to a number. I see 2% up to 5%, depending on whatever aspect of exercise performance they're measuring. And there's also a muscle temperature response that positively relates to the movement velocity. So to put that less scientifically, it's high speed movements are tied to warming, and that ties to improvement performance. So there's a reason we do or recommend quick leg spinning at the start of every workout. So there's a velocity related aspect to that. And the same can be said about the work rate, or in our parlance, the intensity. So, the takeaway here is that all of this so far supports the inclusion of both quick spinning and a little bit of hard work when you're warming up. And this makes sense in most cases. We'll get to the simplicity of all of this a little bit later. And then also, interestingly, the higher the intensity of the warm up, the longer lasting the warming effects. And that's something I kind of want to address a little bit just ahead here. But and I do recognize that it's not always desirable to warm to this point, because we can decrease our heat storage capacity. I mean, on a hot day, warming up in the direct sun prior to a criterium where you're going to be hot from lap one, probably not a good idea. So warm-ups do need to be tempered with good judgment. I mean, it can't all be reduced to science. I can, but I mean, you don't even have to consider the science. Just recognize that if you go in hot, you're going to stay hot, and you're probably going to get hotter. Okay, another benefit, or a purported one, and actually a measured one, or a research-based or evidence-based one, is to elevate baseline VO2. So our oxygen uptake. We want to raise that prior to engaging in whatever our event or race or workout is, for a number of reasons. First of which is we want to improve those VO2 kinetics that we've discussed in the past. And to put it really simply, it's just faster oxygen response. You work harder, you need more oxygen. You work less, you need less oxygen. How quickly do those kinetics change? Secondly, by elevating that baseline VO2, bringing your oxygen uptake up prior to whatever you're going to do, we can actually reduce that VO2 slow component that we've also discussed. So, over time, that inexorable crawl toward not really failure, but definitely diminished performance and more labored, just higher RPE, just harder work, we can actually affect that positively by warming up. And we've talked about this a number of times, and I think this is probably the most obvious one, is we can decrease our reliance on glycogen early in a workout or race. And the idea being that if more oxygen is being consumed, then we're making better use of our aerobic metabolism, which means we're tapping our anaerobic stores less. And I say all this, but this all assumes that the warm-up was intense enough. And Hannah already touched on this, I think, and we're going to talk more about it, but passively noodling on your bike is not the same thing as a structured work or a structured warm-up where you include fast pedaling and efforts that are above your FTP. And it also assumes, and this is very important, that it's not followed by too long a duration of a transition. You can't warm up and then go race 30 minutes later and expect to benefit from any of the any of the things I just described. And quite a lot of the studies pin that at about 10 minutes. And it's a really narrow range. I saw the high end being 9 to 10 minutes. One study looked at 9, everyone else seemed to agree on 10 minutes. It's a round figure, but if you do your warm up, do your best to get to the line and get going within 10 minutes if you want to fully benefit from a lot of the things I just described. And then there are some muscular benefits. I won't get deep in these, but improve muscle metabolism, which we kind of touched on with the aerobic anaerobic contributions. Increase cross-bridge cycling rate. And again, we could dive into what that is, but I don't think that's going to make anybody faster so much as what's important here is to understand that it's just better muscle function. Your muscles work better because they're warmer. Okay. And then you get a little more specific and prime your type 2 fibers, right? Your high force, low fatigue resistant fibers. If you're going to use on that, if anything you're going to do is type 2 reliant, probably a good idea to wake those guys up. Sprinting's part of your ride. It's an obvious get, but any type of racing you do, it could be, cross country mountain bike, marathon mountain bike, even a time trial. If you're going to for whatever reason, attack short climbs. I mean, there are all sorts of use cases where it makes sense to do a little bit or a handful, I guess, of activation efforts. This does translate to improved performance, measured, evidence-based, improved performance. And then finally, it's kind of an outlier, something I don't think people necessarily consider, but it can prime your respiratory muscles. And I leaned on a particular study that showed evidence that use of one of those inspiratory muscle devices, so an IMD, actually improved 3,200 meter running time. And it did so via enhancements in inspiratory muscle function. And I know that doesn't directly translate to what we're talking about here, but it does suggest that perhaps your inspiratory muscles bear a small influence. And I think that makes good reason. Those are muscles we heavily rely upon, especially if we're working hard. So why not kind of prime the pump?
Yeah. So this is a lot of like the physical goings on. Thank you so much, Chad. That was like a wonderful breakdown of what goes on inside our body when we warm up. We also have other episodes where we've talked about this. So if you search for Ask a Cycling Coach podcast warm up, you'll find the different times when we've mentioned this. And Chad just did a fantastic job of summarizing what he's gone into in a lot of depth in other episodes, which is fantastic. I want to focus in on this physical stuff and then go into the mental side of things thereafter. Chad, do you think would it be okay if we went over Hannah's warm up and use that kind of as like a kickoff to talk about the physical things?
Yeah, it's perfect because it kind of tees up a number of questions that I have for William, a number of questions I think we all have for William.
Yeah, no doubt.
Oh.
Hannah, what's your typical warm up like? We can run through that. And then the other question that I have with this is, when do you change that and how do you change it depending on different circumstances?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll do my best to just focus on the physical because I feel like the mental is so intermixed with this as well that I'm excited to talk about that too. But usually I just start with a super easy spin where I just ask nothing of myself other than to turn over the pedals. And that's just going to last as long as I need it to, but probably no more than 5 minutes. And then I'll start an aerobic build, which will lead into a short tempo effort, usually 3 to 5 minutes. And then I'll do usually 3 high cadence spin ups, which I feel like really get my respiratory rate up and get my muscles moving without overloading those muscles. That's the sensation that I have. And then I'll finish up with 1 race pace effort. So that's usually what I'm doing is I'm mimicking what I anticipate the first minute of the race to be. And then I usually spin down a little bit. I actually cool down a little bit from that warm up so that I'm not just standing in the grid right after that hard race pace.
Breathing heavy.
Yeah.
With like legs that feel like they're full of blood and stuff. Yeah. Can I ask you, when you're doing these high cadence spin ups that you do early on, are you paying attention to power, or are you more paying attention to just making sure that you are getting that neuromuscular coordination firing properly?
Mostly just the neuromuscular coordination. I'll look at the power just a little bit, but the range that I allow for this is more than 50 watts. I don't really have any expectation attached to that other than, I'm not going to be below aerobic, I'm not going to be in recovery type for that. But mostly what I'm looking at is being over 110 RPMs for those and still maintaining nice, good circles and not bouncing on the saddle.
Sorry, Hannah. Yeah.
No,
that's a good point too. Like, if the whole point is to build like proper firing patterns and coordination, you don't want to embrace bad technique, right?
Yes.
Kick off the day. Yeah. How about you, Ivy? You just raced a crit this past weekend, something high intensity, relatively short compared to a lot of the different events that you've done. What's your typical warm up like, or what sort of boxes do you like to check in a warm up beforehand?
Well, from a structure standpoint, mine looks remarkably similar to Hannah's. And I laughed when she said she tries to emulate what the beginning of the race looks like, because that's absolutely what I do. Like if I'm going to a road race, I'm not going to honestly, or a longer one, I'm not going to do much, especially if I'm expecting a really kind of slow, chill start. I'll do some high cadence stuff. When I was doing track stuff, we would have like a set of rollers on the rails, like next to the start line, because you want to be like warming up and warm all the time and be able to hop right onto the track. Before this weekend, I rode to the crit and did a lot of my warm up on the ride to the race. And I think the biggest mistake that I see a lot of people do when they are trying to warm up is do really high intensity, like straight up sprinting, like anaerobic, just striking a bunch of matches to think that they need to get their legs open and ready for that kind of effort. And it's super unnecessary. So it's hard to find a balance between making sure you like check all those boxes for those systems without burning a bunch of matches.
Chad, is there like I mean, you've done TTs, crits, road races, mountain bike races across the board. What sort of structure do you typically try to implement for a warm up?
We've touched on all of it. It super relates to, well, first the duration of the event. I mean, if it's going to be a 3-hour road race, unless you're attacking right out of the gate, I half the time don't even warm up for those. My warm up is literally riding my bike to the start line, especially if there's going to be a rollout, in which case warm up is almost purposeless. If it's a time trial, and you're gonna be going fast right from the start, obviously gradually easing into the pace you're going to hold, but it's still going to be a really high pace right off the ramp. Then it's going to be more specific, kind of what Hannah described, just taking your time, kind of letting things open up, and then easing into at some point some race pace efforts, and then dialing it back a little bit so that you have a reprieve between the warm up and the start, but obviously not too long a one. And then with criteriums and anything, cross country mountain bike race, anything that's going to take off really hard, if you're not braced for that, if you haven't established or fortified the neuromuscular communication, you're stacking the deck against yourself, and both psychologically and physiologically. Or I should have said that in the other order, but the psychological component's a big one, because if you've already kind of primed yourself for something that hurts that bad, even if you've just done a toned down version of it, and you should, small ring sprints work great for a really fast start. I mean, if you're going to be one of those guys who wants to chase the first lap preem, or you just want to be up front, or you just want to start hurting people early because you're feeling great, whatever reason, just some small ring sprints do everything you're going to need. You don't need to do some big gears stomps trying to, affect things in the most important way, the most important training way, probably. So, I mean, be realistic about it. Don't overdo it. But it just comes down to keeping it simple. And everyone's touched on this who's spoken so far. What are you facing? Well, do a little bit of that. I mean, and if it's going to be a lot of those things, do a little bit of each of those things, and stagger them in whatever ways you want. If you look at the workouts or the warm-ups that we've are staged prior to every workout. I mean, the workout's always specific, or the warm-up, is always specific to the workout, always has some efforts, 99% of the time, some efforts that are just like what you're going to do. And then sometimes it's a more general warm-up that is specific to a race simulation. And you'll see all sorts of things that, even though they don't specifically apply to the workout, they're purposeful. And even some big gear stomp, or some really high intensity, 150%, 10 seconds at a time, precede a time trial. It's like, well, what's that for? Well, you will rely on those fast twitch fibers to some extent. So why not prime them with some things that aren't going to negatively impact them?
Yeah.
Don't you feel like mentally it helps you too, when it's going to be a really hard start, to
100%
get a gauge for how you're going to feel on that day, to kind of emulate some of those efforts? I know it does for me.
Oh yeah, it's huge. And that kind of brings up let's talk about the Team Sky warm up that was, that's been made famous. So effectively what that is Bradley Wiggins talks about this a lot of the time. He had the same warm up every time, and he used that same warm up because it was like a good diagnostic tool. It allowed him to basically say, okay, cool. I feel like this today when I'm riding at the intended race intensity. And as a result, I'll adjust my plan, something else. I'll adjust the pacing strategy. At least I assume that's the logic behind it. He says that it was repeatable so they could get a good fix for where they were at on the day. I've tried to implement that before, but I found that to be pretty damaging to my ability to be able to deliver in races a lot of the time. And here's why. So in this sort of format, you ride at threshold for a short period of time, then you do these sprints, and you're really trying to pay attention to how you feel during that threshold portion. And when there were days and I didn't feel good, I was like, okay, well, I don't feel good, so today's going to be terrible. And it was hard for me to then overcome that later on in the race, because I had something that was reliable and concrete. And there were days when I did that same effort and I felt incredible. And today I don't feel that. So therefore it can't be a good day. It's going to be a bad day. And then what it would do is it would affect my execution. And I think many times cause me to race underneath my abilities just because I was mentally holding myself back because of that indicator, the diagnostic tool warm-up that we have beforehand. Amber always mentions this from the perspective of approaching something with curiosity. And if you have a warm-up that's placed in front of your racing to completely remove curiosity and give you a programmatical predefined approach, I do think that it can hurt you. Now, granted, it might also be really good to know, like when you go in and you do a warm-up, I mean, if you feel genuinely really, really, really bad, then sure, it can help you understand things later on, but it still shouldn't govern how you race, in my opinion. I think that you should still go out and race and give it your all and give it a shot. So I think that this is kind of like a good dovetail into the psychological side of things and what you're supposed to be doing during a warm-up or what benefit you have from that. Ivy, I'm going to ask you first. And there's music and all the other sorts of motivation that you can bring in as well during a warm-up, but what are you trying to mentally accomplish? Like, what's the mental state, or what are the things that you are trying to accomplish with your warm-up so that by the end you are in a specific mental spot?
Nothing else other than to feel like I know exactly what I'm in for, and how I'm physically going to respond, what it'll feel like, what to expect. That's it. So that goes for, I mean, like the whole scope of getting ready for a ride, that goes for like timing and making sure I have plenty of time and reducing stress, and for race warm-ups specifically, music to get in the right headspace. But yeah, I really just want to, I mean, like the reason why we warm up for getting our legs open and being physically ready is to make sure that we aren't shocked by the effort that's about to take place, right? And so that's basically what I'm trying to prepare myself for. On the mental side too.
Yeah. Hannah, how about you? You mentioned the psychological portion of your warm-up is huge.
Yeah, I think, there's just so much to this. And I think it's really interesting what you brought up with Team Sky, because it makes sense to apply to them because they can change the race hypothetically, depending on how they feel. But it really doesn't make sense for anyone else that I can think of. I mean, if you're not in the world tour road racing and you have a team where you can go to all your teammates and say, hey, this is my sensation, let's do this today. I mean, I'm not going to go on the start line and ask all the ladies if we can ease into the race a little bit more, So it really honestly does not matter how I feel in the warm-up. And for that reason, with athletes that I coach and such, I think it's really important to practice this and create these data points in training as well. I'll actually have people make a note, myself included, when they feel really, really bad in warm up, but then have a great workout, because it happens all the time. And so it's super important to remember those times and have those times data marked in your mind on race day. You can say, oh yeah, I feel bad today, but I did the last time I set a PR in my workout too. So you really have to take it with a grain of salt. And I think for a lot of people, that means structuring it a certain way. It might mean changing up your warm up, or it might be warming up with different metrics. So I think for some people, even though you use power every single day of your life, you might warm up on race day, with more heart rate or perceived exertion, just so you don't get hung up on those numbers, because at that point they're arbitrary. You're not training. You're not, trying to create structure. You're just simply trying to prepare your body for the race ahead. And so for me, that's really what I'm doing in warm up, is I'm trying to free my mind of all expectations. So that's why I always start with the spin, because I've found that if I get on the bike and I just say, okay, I'm going to ride aerobically, immediately it's, what does this feel like? How do my legs feel? What do they feel like when I first get on the bike? What power do I gravitate towards? If I get on and I just say, I'm going to spin. That's it. That's all. Then I find that it's just so much easier to be like, oh yeah, the wattage is low because I'm not expecting it to be high, because this is what I'm setting for myself. And so I kind of carry that throughout the whole warm up. Is there's no expectation. It's just like Amber would say, oh, this is, I'm entering with curiosity. This is how I feel today. That's very interesting that this is how I feel. I wonder how that'll impact X, Y, and Z. But it's not setting up any sort of, it's not, oh, this is how the race is going to be. It's not changing my race strategy. It's not even really changing the warm up that I'm going to do. It's just going through, doing the check marks that I need to do. And then, what I'm really doing mentally during that is finding the things that I can believe. So I'm saying statements to myself that I can buy into. And every race, they're different. Sometimes it is, I'm going to win, and I can believe that. And sometimes that's really hard to believe. So I have to break it down to something different. It's, I'm going to crush this one climb every lap, and I can believe that. And so I'll focus on that and buy into that. And it's finding those phrases that you really truly believe and can hang on to going to the start line.
This resonates with me. I've tried a bunch of different warm-ups, a bunch of different things. I'm an overthinker, so I've overthought a lot of it. And these days, what I typically settle on is I ride for 10 minutes, and that's just low intensity. That's just cruising. It's typically like riding to the race, or I'll just ride away from the venue and ride to it. If it's cold, I like to be able to have a trainer, which we're going to get into this in Chad's questions, which are great. But otherwise, it's just when I'm typically riding around. Then after 10 minutes, what I do is I just slowly ramp it up until what I feel like is a threshold effort, and emphasis on feel like. I'm not trying to ride at power. I'll glance down then and I'll look at power. And once again, just like Hannah said, it's like, okay, interesting. So let's see what it feels like if I hold that for another 4 to 5 minutes. And then after that, then I relax and I might do some quick spin ups, and that's about it. And that's my warm up. And how many times has this happened to all of us where during the warm up we felt something, and in the race we feel something very different? Like for me, it's very rare that the warm up is exactly how I will feel also in the race. Chad just went through a laundry list of different things that are coming on board and getting flipped on and changing in our body when we warm up. And for us to think that it's just like instant perfect diagnostic, that when we do the warm up, it's absolutely everything's on board and we can check the systems for how it'll feel later. We're more complex beings than that. So as a result, during your race, it's probably going to feel a bit different than your warm up. So that's why I try to not put too much stock behind it. I just simply try to get there for a while. And for me, it's almost purely psychological. Honestly, it's just getting to the point where I'm not shocked by the effort, because I'm shocked by the effort every single time I ride. By the first effort, I'm always shocked. It's always hard. So why not get the shock out of the way? So then I can just focus and see when I'm on course. That's really kind of like my whole point behind warmups. I showed up at a short track race last week with like 0 warm-up because just didn't have time. Got to the race, I think, with like 5 minutes to go. And yeah, starting with a bunch of incredibly fast juniors that just blew my doors off. But even then, in those moments, it's a good thing. We're talking about psychological preparation, these warm-ups. I could have easily fallen into the trap, and it was tempting to go, well, this race is going to go terribly because I haven't warmed up. And it's, I'm going to get blown out right at the beginning of the race. It's going to be really hard. And I could run through all the scenarios in my mind. But instead, I was just like, you know what? You're fine. Like, you've done plenty of efforts where you've gone really hard in the beginning, and then that's just how it's stuck, whether it's a group ride that you didn't anticipate to last that long or anything else. So I had to remove all of those temptations from my mind and just approach it with curiosity. Because perfect warm-ups aren't also guaranteed. Like, we don't always have the time to be able to do them like that.
Yeah, I think that the physical sensations of warm-up are rarely the same as the race, but the mental sensations are almost always the same. Yeah. If you're really struggling mentally in the warm-up, I wouldn't expect the switch to flip when you hit the start line. Same way as if you're jazzed and you're excited and you're energized and, man, I'm going to crush this race, you're probably not going to get to the start line and be like, oh, but I didn't warm up well. Like it's right. The mental aspect is going to carry over. And so that's really what I would emphasize more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Chad, what sort of questions would you have in this case for William about the warm up? Kind of like some contextual questions that you could ask him to maybe help.
I have several, but I want to be included on this particular line of conversation right now, because I'm not saying you need to divorce yourself from the psychological aspects of warming up, because they're crucial. They're super important, but I am saying there's a way to mitigate their impact on your headspace. And that's by not taking your warm up seriously. I've done enough races, and I've done probably more workouts than most people on the planet, most endurance athletes. It's been a consistent part of my life for, 30 plus years. And over that time, I've recognized that, just like everyone has touched on already, is that the warm-up does not dictate where I'm at. And for that reason, especially during race prep or a pre-race warm-up, I never look at the data. I mean, that's not to say I never look at the data. I might glance down at it, but I never let that sink in. It's just, it doesn't matter. I need to, I'm doing a time trial, so I need to feel what a time trial effort is. I don't care what the watts tell me right now. It's just, okay, this is how hard a time trial feels, because those watts are probably not the watts I'm going to deliver, especially if I know I've done the work, I've done the recovery, I've done the nourishment, I'm in a good place mentally. I mean, if everything's there already setting the stage for me, I'm not going to let my warm up talk me out of a good performance. So just kind of at least detach, don't divorce from it, but detach from what the warm-up is telling you. Just if you look at the data, don't let it affect you. If you don't want to look at the data, don't look at the data. Just do the efforts that you have to do. A sprint's a sprint. Doesn't matter if you're generating 1500 watts or 500 watts. If you got on it real hard, you're accomplishing what you need to accomplish.
Do y'all have a special warm-up screen on your head unit? Because I do. It's just
I do.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's called electrical tape. Cover that crap up.
Yeah. It's man, it's something that, once again, we have a tendency to overthink, all of us endurance athletes. And the warm up is one where we can tie ourselves in a knot rather than enabling ourselves for a good performance. So well said, Chad. Like, why would you let a warm up derail something that you've built for in a very measured and responsible way for months? Like, you have a track record that proves that you'll be able to perform, right? So don't let that warm up.
And even on the days where it's quite the opposite, where you're like, I am going to feel terrible today. I've barely trained, or, I took a week off the bike, or everything's is standing against me right now. And my warm up feels great, doesn't feel great, doesn't matter. It's still probably not going to bear a real influence on how you race.
Yeah. Well, and unless you warm up on a trainer, it's going to be different every time anyways. So you have to allow for flexibility.
Yeah. Chad, what questions would you have for William too? You have a handful of them here, and I think that they can bring up some good talking points on how to execute a warm up.
Yeah. So first, we've touched on these already. My biggest question we have, but we have different views on it, and that's going to be fun to discuss. So first off, is it cold? I mean, that's an easy get. I mean, we just talked about muscles function better when they're warmed, and they function better when they're kept warm. You can't warm up, let them cool off, and then expect to have all the benefits of the warming.
Chad, can I go nerd on this one really quick?
Sure.
Because this one matters a lot to me. On the temperature side of things, you mentioned warming up for a criterium. I'm sure you're thinking of the Davis 4th of July criterium that you've raced plenty of times, when it's just always extremely hot. And it's a criterium that's usually really fast, and it's also a lot of turns. You can go onto our YouTube channel and you can see examples of that one. So
I don't think I've ever done it under 100 degrees. I really don't.
Yeah. And it's always hard. And the reason that it's always hard is because you've got those turns that are constant in that course, snaking back and forth. So it means that the race is always, if you're not moving forward, you're moving back. It's one of those situations. It's pretty hard to sit in. So in a race like that, you do want to make sure that you're warmed up. But warming up in and of itself just raises your core temperature quite a lot. And then if you do it on a trainer, it's going to raise your core temperature even higher, because you're lacking that evaporative cooling that you have from moving. Because even on a windy day, when it's, over 100 degrees and really hot, that you don't get much effect when you're just sitting still like that. You get a whole lot more when you're moving.
Races like that are the best promotion or support for cooling vests. I mean,
yes.
It doesn't matter if you sit in the shade with fans on you. Fans are blowing warm air. Shade only does so much. The cooling vest actually makes a tremendous impact in events like that.
I agree. And this is why, like, for an event like cyclocross, when it's cold, I think that the trainer is awesome for warming up, rollers, something like that, because it's so cold that if you ride around outside, you might be just freezing yourself, but just by moving through the air at a high rate of speed when you're trying to warm up. Whereas if you can warm up on those rollers, it's great. Also, like when you think about this, remember Chad said that you're trying to bring a whole lot of systems online. And if you do raise your core temperature too much, it's not like you can just like quickly cool off, within that 10 minutes and you're ready to go for the start line. Core temperature actually takes quite a while to adjust. And it's not something that just the effects are instant as soon as we can, and we can't just like drop it by stepping into the shade.
And it's dependent on the ambient conditions too. So if you're sitting in 100-degree or 90-degree ambient conditions, you can only expect to cool so much.
Yeah. So think about that in terms of what is the temperature going to be? And then for me, that's my next decision from that is, okay, am I going to warm up stationary or am I going to warm up on the road, moving through or on the trail, whatever else it might be? That's a big point that I think doesn't get enough focus. So yeah, I think it's a really good question. Sorry, Chad.
Yeah, well, no, it's fine. And still on the topic of cold temperature, because I'm not assuming anything, but if it is a cold ride, then, the warm up is going to carry different impact, or you're going to have to focus on different things than if it's a hot ride. But let's assume it's cold. We've already determined that, or already, laid out that muscles just function better when they're warm. But this is something, honestly, I'd maybe come across, but didn't really process it. But the speed of muscle relaxation is also affected by the temperature. And it's a pretty surprisingly high temperature where they're still affected. It was, I can't remember what it is in Celsius, but it was like high 70s in Fahrenheit, wow, which is not particularly cold, but it does have an impact apparently on how well they relax. And we've talked a number of times about, muscles resisting muscles. You got synergists and agonists and agonists and antagonists. So, if we're pushing down the pedals and our quadriceps are firing and our glutes are firing to some extent, and our hamstrings are for whatever reason resisting because it's cold temperatures or cool temperatures, and they can't quite let go as readily as they would, we're working against ourselves, which even if it's 2 milliseconds magnified times 90 repetitions per minute times however many minutes that lasts, it can be an impact. So we do take an efficiency hit when the muscles aren't sufficiently warm, even on the other side of things, the relaxation side of things, not even the contraction side of things. So the temperature is absolutely a concern on both sides of it. And then my second question is, what's your typical cadence? And I know Hannah mentioned this already, and there's the cadence you're going to ride at, and whether or not that serves you best is debatable. That's a whole other conversation, but the warm-up cadence shouldn't be direct mimicry of what your usual cadence is, or even what your race cadence is going to be, because we've talked about how some of that quick spinning does do things that may not seem directly applicable, but will carry performance benefits. And then what intensities are you actually encountering during that first hour? This is a big deal, because, then you have to ask yourself, just like we're talking about with the specificity of the warm-ups, are you priming the right energy systems? Are you priming the right muscle fibers? Did you do small efforts at the intended intensities? Because and it's the same thing, that warm-up simplification, you need to replicate what's ahead. Don't surprise your body. Don't surprise your brain. Do the things that are similar to what you're expecting to do soon. So if you're rolling into this, maybe you've got 10 minutes to get to the start of the ride and you just noodle over there, and then it's going to be a fast start. Well, surprise, surprise, you're not ready for that. And this is going to be harder on you than it is for the people who maybe on their rollover did a couple hard efforts. And then this brings me to our biggest question. I think this is the one we can jive on the most, is why do your friends always fall apart toward the end? And I know each of us, I've seen it on paper and I've heard it mentioned, have different theories on this. Frankly, I see it as they're just not pacing as well as you are. I think you might be getting it right. You're rolling into a long ride, holding a little bit back at the beginning, or resisting it, or suffering, but then you end up feeling better toward the end of it. Tells me they're all going out too hard. They're all expending too much too soon, such that the last hour of the ride is miserable for them. And they're looking at you like, why are you still so fresh? Well, I didn't blow myself up in the first hour or two.
Yeah. And when you're psychologically in a state where like, oh, I need a long time to warm up, I need to do that, you're going to ride efficiently. You're going to ride conservatively. You're going to do all those necessary things to be able to conserve energy and pace properly. Right. So I think that this is where the big point lies. It's the story you tell yourself about you and your needs to warm up and how that affects your pacing. And then you're inherently considering your situation against your friends, and you're considering that your friends have the ideal state and you do not, which is something we all do with every race. We show up to a race and we just think about whether we're in perfect condition or not. And we never think about the fact that everybody else is asking the same exact question and thinking that, oh, I'm not perfect today. So that's almost that should be erased. Nobody warms up perfectly in relation to you. Don't think of it in that regard. Everybody always feels uncomfortable in the beginning. That is part of it. In most cases, most people that are amateur cyclists, not professionals, and I don't know, maybe Hannah and Ivy can back us up here and say it's the case in professionals too, but most cyclists also go out too hard. So if you combine all of these factors, maybe in this case, William, you're doing great. Like, it's normal. You just make sure that if you do need to do something like a warm up and you have time to do a warm up, sure, you can do it. If you don't have time to do a warm up, go in and expect the first little bit to feel uncomfortable, but continue to pace yourself and you'll be in a good spot. But never think that you are the only one with a problem or the only one that's unique in this case. Everyone feels something that's likely very similar to what you're feeling on the bike. Hannah, I don't know. Do you have anything else to add on this one?
Yeah, I think that this is where you have to decide what you want to accomplish, and then you have to get over it mentally. So if you want to have your best race or your best ride, then maybe you're pacing it perfectly. And you should take joy in the fact that you're beating everyone at the end, because just like you're saying, how are they beating me at the start? You even said they're asking you, how do you have this much energy at the end? So I think in some ways it can be a grass is always greener situation. And if this is what works for you and that's how you feel, then instead flip the script mentally and be proud of your resilience and your endurance. But on the other hand, if you would prefer, or you even want to just try to be a different kind of racer, have a different kind of ride, try to change your expectation and to go out really, really, really hard at the start and see what happens. Just like Jonathan said, a lot of races, we all start too hard, and we all know that we start too hard. It's a part of racing. It's almost a game of chicken. And that's usually I'm on the throttle the first lap, just saying, it's going to slow down. Everybody hurts. It's going to slow down. Everybody hurts, because that's the truth. No one is holding that pace. So the next hour and a half, 3 hours, 8 hours, whatever, if it's Leadville, whatever it is, everyone's starting just a little bit too fast. And some people a lot of it too fast. So don't be afraid of that.
Look at what William's describing though. He's not saying the race or the ride starts too hard and I get dropped. He's saying it starts too hard and I hang in there. I mean, exactly what you're describing right now. And then what happens toward the end of this ride is he's the one who's excelling, in a race, what that translates to success. I mean, you're on the podium, you're in the top 10, you're the winner. I mean, because you did it right. So he's getting through the hard part, which leads me to believe that none of this is really physiologically explicable. I think this is all on the psychological side. He's deciding to interpret feelings in a particular way that's setting his headspace up to not fail, but to struggle. When if he just would let himself off that leash and recognize, this is the way it goes, and then I'm good in the last hour, so I'm just going to trust that I'm obviously not getting it wrong. This is hard, but racing is, group rides are, workouts are. Just get okay with it, because my belief is that, William, you're mentally reining in your physical capabilities. They're there. They can do the job. You're just fighting them early on, and then benefiting from the fact that they're still existent in that last hour where you're surpassing everybody else.
So there's a couple things too that I think one, just flip the script and say everybody's hurting, and like Chad just said, I'm hanging in and then I'm winning. So woohoo, I'm victorious.
And some people are great at masking that, right?
Yeah.
And some people are really good at looking like they're totally fine when they're not.
And everyone is better than you. if that makes sense, because you know what you're feeling. And so even if you're masking it well, at least for me, I never really know if I am or not, because in my head, I know what I'm feeling, but I don't know what anyone else is feeling. But the other thing I would do is, one, if you have a power meter, see what the difference is. See if you are going harder at the start. And then the other side of that too is just one time carve out some extra warm up before the start and see if that actually does make a difference, or if it is just indeed a hard beginning of the ride. And then that kind of starts to eliminate some of these variables, and it'll help you tell a more accurate story in your head.
Yeah, fantastic advice. Separating this from William's experience, if you show up to the race and you want to get in a warm up, but you don't have the time and you're stressed and you're everything else, it's once again, so much of warm ups is the psychological preparation. And if you show up in just a state and you are twisted in knots, it's going to be difficult to get a whole lot of value out of that. Ivy, you have a few tips that you would give people just to kind of arrive at the race a little bit more calm and less disorganized and scrambled. What tips would you give to set yourself up for success with your warm up?
Yeah, when you were saying that, I just had flashbacks of being less organized and showing up to register when people are like on their trainers, and I'm like, whoops, nope. Yep. Spoiler alert, the race didn't go very well. But yeah, specifically if we're talking about a crit and riding to a race or a short track or something that you can ride to, I like to ride there because I feel like that process of looking at the venue map, figuring out how I'm going to ride there, knowing how long it'll take me, knowing how much time it'll take me, and packing my little bag with all the clothes that I may or may not need, and like recovery drink and snacks and everything, just makes me feel like I'm having a plan that takes away. I feel like when I'm driving a cardio race, I kind of lean on it as a crutch a little bit, and you can just throw all your junk in your car, and you don't really need to look, or I feel like I don't need to look that closely at exactly how long it'll take me, how, like where I will park, how far away I have to park from registration, how it leaves a lot of variables unknown for how long it will take me to actually get ready for the race. So that's why I like to, when I can, ride to a race.
I think I've mentioned this before, but I just build out in the notes app or my phone or whatever else you have like easily accessible. I typically build out like an outline based on the schedule of the race. And it's like, I start at the start of the race, and then I think, okay, I'll probably want to show up to the line 5 to 10 minutes ahead of time, like 5 minutes ahead, depending on the race. Sometimes you have to show up really early for call up. Sometimes you don't. And then from there, I'll think, okay, and then it'll take me, I want to have this amount of time for my warm up. And then I want to have this amount of time to get dressed, this amount of time to pin my number on, that sort of stuff. And then that means I want to arrive at the race at this point, which means I want to leave my house by this point. But I set that all up in my phone, so I don't have to think about that schedule and recreate that schedule in my mind all the time and wonder. It's a small thing, but it makes everything else fall into place. And then it makes it so that when my warm up is there, I don't stress about time. I don't stress about anything else. I just know that my only focus right now is just getting my body ready and getting my mind ready.
On that topic, let's talk about what happens in the event that you get there close to it and the warm-up doesn't happen, because I think we've all been in that situation, and there's really a couple of routes to go. You either just grit your teeth and know this is going to be really hard. I'm not physiologically ready. I'm not mentally braced. I'm probably still distracted because I showed up late and I barely got everything together just in time to get here. And now the race is starting. Or you can check out and maybe the extreme side of things, you're like, I'm not even going to race. I showed up. I didn't get my warm up in. This is why bother? Bother because you can work your way through some misery and still hang in there. Maybe it won't be your best race. Maybe you'll miss an early break. Maybe, I don't know. So many things can happen, but you'd be surprised over the course of even a short 30-minute crit, how much your system, your body and your brain can rally and get you back in it. Just because you miss your warm up, or just because your warm up isn't exactly what you wanted it to be, maybe it was a bit truncated, again, don't take your warm up too seriously. And if you miss your warm up, don't write off that race. You'd be surprised at what you can deal with if you'll just make yourself do it.
I always think of it as there's going to be an effort early on in my day that is going to be extremely uncomfortable. And that's inevitable. It's going to hit, like, no matter what. And if I have time to warm up, fantastic, because then I can get that one out of the way and then show up into the race and be familiar with what that feels like. And then it's not going to hurt as much just because I'm familiar with it. That's it. Like, that's all it is. Like, my body or my mind tells me that, hey, I've just recently done this and I made it through, therefore I can do it again. And I've shown up to our local crits with like zero chance to warm up because of time. And on the line, I've taken a bunch of different approaches in this situation, but on the line, I've simply gone, well, it's going to hurt. So I might as well actually, and this is my brain, so this may not lead to success, but like, it's going to hurt really bad. So I might as well actually just go extremely hard from the gun because it's going to hurt everybody else. And then I get it out of the way. And then I have the rest of the race where it's not going to feel as hard. That's the story I tell myself. And then as a result, that's what happens. Like, it all comes down to what we end up telling ourselves and how we move through it that way. So yeah, I mean, your warm up isn't always going to be perfect, and you have to be versatile enough, and you have to understand that, be smart enough to know what you're getting at here. And that's to just get yourself mentally prepared. The physical stuff is going to come online as well, but you can think your way out of a good race, and you can think your way into a good race. And it's really just up to how you want to view it. So yeah.
I would also say if you get there late and instead of a 25, 30-minute warm-up, you only have 10 minutes. I wouldn't just do the first 10 minutes of your warm-up routine and then call it a day. I would condense everything into that 10 minutes. So shorter spin, shorter aerobic, shorter tempo, one spin up and one race effort, and then be done. Like, just push it all together, get it all done, or as much as you can done, and get to the start line. Don't just spin around for 10 minutes. It's not going to do a lot for you.
I would agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Really good advice.
If you like this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up.
If you didn't like this video, you can give it a thumbs down, but let us know what you would have done differently in the comments below.
If you want to see more of these videos, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to become a faster cyclist, check out TrainerRoad.com.
Do it.